Hag Sameach, everyone, and welcome to our Kolami COVID-crushing Seder, or if you prefer, Seder, since we're all here on Zoom. It is a chance to do a unique and completely different way of celebrating the sacred and important time for us. It is surpassingly strange, as perhaps it is to you. But Robin has bravely been volunteering. And welcome to our Kolami COVID-crushing Seder, or if you prefer, Seder, since we're all here on Zoom. It is a chance to do a unique and completely different way of celebrating the sacred. Are we back?
You never were lost. It was the YouTube feed feeding back for you.
I wasn't lost, and now I'm found. All right. Well, we could all burst into actually, you know, this reminds me rather a lot of the Trinity Broadcast Network, where Paul Crouch and his wife, Jan, sit there and talk to the crowd and do faith healing over the community by television. Of course, you know that Jewish faith healers would never work, because someone would come to you, they were sick, and you would say to them, "Oi, you think you've got problems? Let me tell you about my sicknesses." Right, so we won't do any faith healing tonight. Instead, what we're going to do here is we're going to honor, sometimes with great solemnity, sometimes with a little bit of humor, the great tradition of our master story, the story of how we were once slaves in the land of Egypt, but now we are free. I hope you are all comfortable at home. I have my bottle of wine that Robin and I will be sharing. If you've got a bottle of wine at home, you feel free to participate. Whatever you've got, you may enjoy. However, every symbolic object is here for us. I even include my symbolic objects. For example, you'll notice that I'm wearing running shoes. What better thing to wear on your way out of Egypt in a hurry than running shoes? So we're about to begin. And I hope you've called up and produced either printed out or as this, or you have electronically our COVID-crushing community Haggadah. And this was produced, by the way, on a lovely little website that was shown to me just a little while ago called Haggadah.com. If you at some point in the future want to create a Haggadah for your family and for yourself, this is an amazing tool. Okay, I messed up a few things along the way. Hopefully I'll wrangle around them. But with a relatively, we've lowered the curve in terms of producing your own Haggadah. It's pretty good. And I hope you take the opportunity to use it as a future if we find ourselves in a situation like this again. What can I say? This is not a conventional situation. But the truth of the matter is our people have celebrated this holiday in this way under unbelievable circumstances, so many different kinds of times, good times, bad times, glorious times, harsh times. What we face is a challenge in our time, in our generation, but it's hardly an insurmountable one. And we are especially blessed that we have this miracle of mass communication, something virtually inconceivable outside of science fiction until very recently, but now we can do it. So,
can I ask a question?
You may. The whole Seder is about asking questions.
Like that. So I just thought it would be nice for people to know how we're planning to do this. We're
Excellent.
not going to stop and have the meal and then continue.
That is absolutely right. Yes. So if you look at your Haggadah, you will see that I have moved the meal to the conclusion of this virtual Seder. We're going to take it all the way through. It just didn't seem reasonable to ask you to all break for dinner and then regather online. So we're going to do this from beginning to end now. It is a rabbi takana, a sudden rabbinic decision that we're going to do it this way under the exigent circumstances, and hopefully it will work. Any other questions?
Not yet.
No, that was a great question.
Thank you.
All right, you are princess of the synagogue so far tonight. All right, so we're going to begin on page 2 with the lighting of the candles. Now, I will be reading. You are absolutely welcome to pipe in with the responsives. I can't hear you, but that doesn't mean you can't hear each other. And it is also, we're going to be singing, led by Lindsay. If Bob is one of the wise sons tonight, he will mute me while Lindsay is singing. But you don't have to be muted. You can sing along. All right, so we begin on page 2. The Seder officially begins with a physical act, lighting the candles. In Jewish tradition, lighting candles and saying a blessing over them marks a time of transition from the day that is ending to the one that is beginning, from ordinary time to sacred time. Lighting the candles is an important part of our Pesach celebration because their flickering light reminds us of the importance of the fragile flame of freedom alive in the world. And so I turn it over to my beloved wife.
See if I can do it first time. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel yom tov. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us with laws and commandments and commanded us to light the festival lights. As we light the festival candles, we acknowledge that as they brighten our Passover table, good thoughts, good words, and good deeds brighten our days.
Let us also note how the candles model for us. They are socially distanced from one another, as one would hope the candles would be. And so we learn from our tradition, even from its ancient forms, that it has modern applications. All right, we continue with the thought that Pesach is a time of inclusion. On Seder night, there are 2 moments where we are metaphorically opening our doors and inviting others in. One is the opening of the Magid portion of the Seder when we say, all who are hungry, come and eat. There is a beautiful message here. We were once slaves. We were once poor and hungry, and we remember our redemption by sharing what we have with others. Now, on this particular night, we are not able to invite guests. However, though we may lose out on the mitzvah of hachnasat orchim, the opportunity to invite guests into our midst, we fulfill this night the mitzvah of pekuach nefesh. By isolating ourselves, we preserve life. We are fulfilling one of the greatest mitzvot of all the mitzvot. So we have exchanged one mitzvah for another. The other metaphoric opening comes towards the end of the Seder, when we have the custom of pouring a 5th cup of wine, which we claim is for Elijah the prophet. This is a statement of faith, a statement of hope, a statement that says that although we are now a free people, our redemption, the world's redemption, is not yet complete. And we believe, however, that it will come. From the most downtrodden to the most celebrated, the message is clear. Everyone is welcome. Everyone is necessary. Why is it that we go out of our way to include all in our Seder table? Perhaps it is because when we make room for others, we have an opportunity to make even greater room for ourselves as well. In fact, the Mishnah teaches us, B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. In every generation, a person is obligated to see themselves as if they themselves left Egypt. The Seder presents us with the obligation of identifying with the generation that left Egypt and internalizing that spirit. And through that internalization, we come to feel the redemption as if it were our own, as well as lirot et atzmo, we see ourselves fully. Further, the reliving of the story affords us the opportunity to see our true self. It is not only that we are able to see ourselves clearly, but that we are prepared and ready to be redeemed. So perhaps the only way we are able to see ourselves is when we are truly able to see those around us as well. This message of inclusion is this is a message from the people who wrote this. We're going to skip over that, though it's a very nice group. It's called Pardes, and it's a special study place in Jerusalem. I used to go there when I was in the rabbinical school. We're going to skip over that. We hope this will add new meaning to your Seder and help the Jewish people come a little closer together. All right, now we come first of all to our first of 4 glasses of wine. You'll notice that 4 comes up quite a bit. Anybody want to chat in and tell us why we drink 4 glasses of wine, why that obligation exists? Anybody know that, have that at literally at their fingertips?
You're watching. Well, one of my children, I think one of them said the 4 matriarchs.
The 4 matriarchs, not a bad answer.
But it was the wrong answer.
Well, you know, there are many, many great answers, but there's only one truly.
Okay.
For the 4 seasons?
4 Seasons is a great choice. Who said that?
Mr. Armentor.
Oh, Mr. Armentor made a great gesture. The 4 Seasons definitely plays into our Haggadah, so it is not a wrong answer, though it's not the definitive answer. Anybody else? Da, 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 da.
4 Promises from Judith Bernstein.
Oh, very nice.
Oh,
Okay, we're
Judith.
going very feminist here. This is good. You know, the tradition, we need to recognize how much women play a role in the redemption of the Jewish people. And so those are both great ideas. But I'll
She
cut
said
to,
promises.
what's that?
Promises?
Did you say promises or prophetesses? Say again?
4 promises. We've had a couple.
Yes, no, that is the correct answer. Thank you. I'm sorry, Judith. That is the definitive answer. It is 4 promises. There are 4 times in the Torah that God promises to deliver us from Egypt. And so we begin, as we begin all Jewish celebrations, from holidays to wedding, as a wine, as a symbol of our joy, not to mention the very, very practical way to increase that joy. The Seder starts with wine and then gives us 3 more opportunities to refill our cup and drink. So, ladies and gentlemen, I turn it over to Lindsay. Lindsay, would you lend your beautiful voice to leading us in the Bore Pri Hagafen?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Now, we're not drinking yet. I saw you try and do that. All right. All right. So we're going to recite the English translation of the Kiddush, and then she's going to lead us in the Shechianu. We praise God, ruler of everything, who chose us from all peoples and languages and sanctified us with commandments and lovingly gave to us special times for happiness, holidays, and this time of celebrating the holiday of Matzah, the time of liberation, reading our sacred stories, remembering the Exodus from Egypt, for you chose us and sanctified us among all peoples, and you have given us joyful holidays. So we praise you who sanctifies the people of Israel and the holidays. And now, because we're together for the first time this year on this occasion, we sing the Shechianu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
L'chaim, everyone, l'chaim.
We're gonna do the whole thing, huh?
I did. It gave me strange dreams last night, but I'm totally committed to this project. All right. Now, having drank our first cup of wine for the first promise and to celebrate the beginning of the holiday, we come to Urchatz, the washing of the hands. There is a lovely meditation here that I welcome you to read. However, let me say this because you know me, I'm a very history-minded guy. So the history of washing our hands originally begins with the priesthood in the temple. It is not something that every ancient Israelite was asked or expected to do. In the 1st and 2nd centuries, the rabbis adopted the practice because they wanted us to become a nation of priests. And so we would mimic everything that the priesthood did. And so that custom has come into existence. The Reform movement, however, recognized that this was not originally intended for all Jews, and so they said it is no longer obligatory. However, we are welcome to wash our hands ritually if we wish. And here the Seder is probably the one time that most Reformed Jews encounter this practice every year. So Robin and I are going to come forward. We have here a wonderful holy container. I'm sure you've seen this many times at Oneg's. And for the purposes of washing, I have a coffee mug because there's something sacred about coffee.
I was
too.
thinking about a coffee.
All right, love, would you put out your right
You want me
hand?
to do it?
Yeah, so I'm gonna pour over. You pour from the wrist. Yep, 2. And if you're Chabadnik, 3. And then the other hand, 1, 2,
You didn't bring towels, did
and
you?
3. Now, all right. And then if you would do the same for me, now you'll notice there's no bracha. All right, ready? All right. Now, if you notice, I did it with the reverse hands because I'm left-handed. So be it. Now, the reason we don't say a bracha is we have no idea, but it's built in. It's one of those intriguing, mysterious things that we're commanded to do during the Seder to provoke us to talk and think and argue and debate why we did it that way. Anybody want to type in a thought on why we wash our hands but don't say a blessing yet?
I'm watching.
Well, I have an idea
Okay,
since I'm here.
yes.
Well, I mean, before priests go to the temple, they have to be clean.
Right.
So the cleanliness isn't the issue. It's the state you should be in before
Mm-hmm.
you do the holy thing.
Okay, good, good. So it's
frankly, we don't need
anticipatory.
it. I don't know that we need one. Yeah.
That's true. Okay, so that's good. And it's also, yes, what else?
We had the guess of just basic hygiene.
Basic hygiene. You will notice on the next page, page 8, I actually gave you a picture of the proper way to wash your hand at all times, but especially under these circumstances. And indeed, hygiene is something of importance, though famously, in the ritual practice of washing our hands, the rabbis command that we wash our hands hygienically before we do the ritual washing.
That's very rabbinic.
That's very rabbinic, right? When in doubt, do it twice. All right, so meditate on the meaning of a silent gesture and a silent sacred act. And now we come to Karpas, all right? Spring green. We are celebrating the spring. And here our parsley also serves, as we know, the traditional interpretation that we are taking this symbol of spring and our joy, and we are dipping it in water, which is a brine, in order to remind us of our ancestors suffering as slaves, their tears. And so I invite you all to dip. Okay. At this contemporary time, however, it reminds us to think about our supply chains, about how amazing it is that you and I, under the most difficult conditions, can acquire parsley, can acquire virtually every product we need. We are so amazingly blessed in the contemporary world. We are rich beyond the imagination of King Solomon, and we should rejoice in that, that we can, even in the most difficult times, find what we need, even toilet paper. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'adamah. We praise you, God, ruler of all, who creates the fruits of the earth. Please eat. We look forward to a reawakening in our land of flowers, of greenery, and of the life of our community. They haven't been lost. They're just buried down for a little while, getting ready for reappearance when we need them most. And now we turn to Yachatz, the breaking of the middle matzah. Again, another inexplicable moment provided to us by the rabbis in order to trigger our curiosity. So before me, I have this wonderful matzah cover, and it is actually divided into 3 sections, separating 3 pieces of matzah. And so I will pull them out, top, middle, and bottom. I present you with the 3 levels of matzah, and then without explanation, I pull this up, I pull out the middle piece, and can I do it?
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty
That's
good.
beautiful. All right. And the larger piece, I now take and set aside to serve as the afikomen. Nothing is said about this ritual. Instead, we speak of the bread of affliction. Here we go.
Want me to read?
Yes, please.
There are 3 pieces of matzah stacked on the table. We now break the middle matzah into 2 pieces. The host should wrap up the larger of the pieces, and at some point between now and the end of dinner, hide it.
I'm going to do something magical with this. This is going to be the magic of online podcasting.
This piece is called the afikomen, literally dessert in Greek. After dinner, the guest will have to hunt for the afikomen in order to wrap up the meal and win a prize. We eat matzah in memory of the quick flight of our ancestors from Egypt. As slaves, they had faced many false starts before finally being let go. So when the word of their freedom came, they took whatever dough they had and ran with it before it had the chance to rise, leaving it looking something like a matzah.
And so we are reminded that just as today, matzah represents being unprepared, as many of us were for this crisis, and responding creatively, as many of us have done. For this is the bread of affliction, which our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. And so everyone who's hungry, come and eat. All who are needy, come and celebrate with us the Passover. This year, we are here. Next year, we hope to be in the land of Israel. This year, we are still enslaved to something. Next year, may we all be free. This is a special food. It is a great food for the unprepared, for the people caught off guard, for the people who are struggling to figure out what to do next. It is, by the way, an excellent survival food. All right.
Yeah.
It simply does not, it doesn't mold over easily. It's wonderful. And so we honor that, but we don't eat it yet. Our world is broken, and we are often unintentionally the source of that breaking. What is something that you intentionally or unintentionally broke this year, besides the economy or all of our social links? Think about this. It may not be up to us individually to solve all the problems of the world, to finish the work of repairing all that is broken. And yet each of us must engage and do all that we can. And that is what we are celebrating here. Now we come to the next part of our story, the story of our exodus from Egypt. It is the master story of our people. I believe it is the greatest story ever told. It has shaped the minds of people in the Western world far beyond the Jewish people. It has been the inspiration for reform and revolution in many cultures. It is a most powerful story, one that is in some ways transcending any tale or history or a legend that we can tell in any way otherwise. All right, now, our Haggadah does not tell the story of Passover in a linear fashion, in case you haven't noticed in all the decades before. We don't hear about Moses being found by the daughter of Pharaoh. Actually, we don't hear about Moses at all. Instead, we get a kind of impressionistic collection of songs and images and stories of both the Exodus in Egypt and from Passover celebrations from prior generations. Some say that minimizing the role of Moses keeps us focused on the miracles God performed for us. Others insist we keep focusing on the role that each and every one of us has in bringing positive change. At this time, I'd like to call attention to a modern addition to the Seder tradition, and that is the cup of Miriam. So while we don't mention Moses very much, we don't give credit to the women virtually at all in the traditional Seder. And so it has been in the last 30 years or so that the idea has been introduced that we should have a cup of Miriam, the third member of the prophetic triad that brought us out of Egypt: Moses and Aaron and Miriam. And Miriam, of all of them, was probably the most practical and useful of all the prophets, because according to our tradition, it was Miriam who provided the people with their daily supply of water as they made their journey. That was her special miracle, the well of Miriam, which our Midrash says literally followed her around everywhere she went. And so everywhere that Miriam went, the Israelites were sure to follow. And so we honor her, and we honor all the women, Shifra and Puah and Batia, the daughter of Pharaoh, all the women who helped in our redemption. All right, we're going to turn now to page 14. All right, I've already done Yachma. All right, we come to the four questions, page 15. The formal telling of the story of Passover is framed as a discussion with lots of questions and answers. The tradition that the youngest person answers the question reflects the centrality of involving everyone in the Seder. The rabbis who created the formal set of the Seder gave us four questions to help break the ice in case no one had their own questions, as if they didn't know the Jewish people. Asking questions is the core tradition in Judaism. Something that I will tell you is one of the most common things that a potential convert, a potential ger who comes to me, says attracts them to Judaism. They love the fact that we embrace questions. Asking questions is our core tradition and value. If everyone at your Seder is around the same age, perhaps that's instructions. Ignore that. Instead, we're going to have, of the four people helping to conduct this, we're going to have the youngest one, which would be Lindsay, sing Ma Nishtana.
All right. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilot, mikol haleilot, shebechol haleilot anu ochlim hametz u'matzah, hametz u'matzah, halayla hazeh, halayla hazeh kulo matzah, halayla hazeh, halayla hazeh kulo matzah, shebechol halelot anu ochlim shi'ar yerakot, shi'ar yerakot, halayla hazeh, halayla hazeh maror, maror, halayla hazeh, halayla hazeh maror, maror, שבכל הלילות איננו מכפילים אפילו במעט, אפילו במעט, הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה שתי פעמים, הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה שתי פעמים, שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים בין יושבים ובין מסובים, בין יושבים ובין מסובים, הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה כולנו מסובים, הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה כולנו מסובים.
All right. We call it the four questions, but of course it's really only one question. Why is this night different from all other nights? And we offer traditional answers. Here was the absolutely fabulous illuminated manuscript pillows from a Hebrew Haggadah that we have for our leaning. I hope you've got something comfy, maybe a Barca lounger or something to kick back in. But in any case, actually, I think probably more important to question to ask ourselves on this specific Pesach is the question, how is this night still the same as all the other Pesach nights we've experienced before? What remains true and durable and reliable and stable in our experience this night, despite all the other changes we endure? I'm going to suggest a few, and I invite you to add some. On this night, it's the same that we have our familiar symbols and our traditions. It's on this night that once again we find comfort in the noise and sound of each other. And once again, we find comfort in the familiar faces and familiar voices that we've known from years past. In this night, as in other nights, we find comfort in off-key singers like myself. We find the same matzo ball soup, the same brisket, the same chicken. Who else has thoughts about what is still the same, what is still durable about this night compared to other nights? Does anybody have any thoughts?
Music.
Music. The music we use is very familiar. There is a wide range of Passover music, but the fact of the matter is that liturgically we tend to stay close to the things we learned when we were young, the things we love, we remember. Hearing a familiar song on the radio brings us joy and comfort and takes us back to earlier times, and so it is too with our liturgy. What else?
I'd like to add something.
Please.
Well, when I hear about what our ancestors went through and their ability to survive to today, that's what I'm thinking of now. I mean, and every year I think about we've survived this long, and I think it's actually a little more potent right now.
It is.
But it's still also the whole we're another link in the chain.
We are.
And that's always
and it's an extraordinary thing to realize how deep our roots go, and that Jews for generations and generations before us were doing this very same ritual in this very same way with these very same objects before them. And we are an ancient, deeply rooted people, a people rooted in the very heart of humanity and in the very essence of what it is to be human. Any other additions before I close out? Let me just add that we are still Jews. It is still Passover, and we still are telling our story. And so it is that we endure and we pass on this story to the next generation. All right, let's continue now with the 4 children. All right. So by the way, if you look on page 20, you have one of my favorite little cartoon illustrations I've ever seen, which is the 4 children as represented by the 4 Marx brothers. I've been convinced, though I cannot prove it, that they adopted their 4 personas based on the Haggadah. All right, so we turn to the 4 children. As we tell the story, we think about it from all angles. Our tradition speaks of 4 different types of children who might react differently to the Passover Seder. It is our job to make our story accessible to all the members of our community, so we think about how we might be able to reach each type of child. So, what does the wise child say, my dear?
The wise child asks, what are the testimonies and laws which God commanded you?
You must teach this child the rules of observing the holiday of Passover. Some of our children are drudges and rule keepers and people who want to master the details. And those people are beloved of Jewish tradition, and we call them wise. On the other hand, what does a troublesome child say? We'll not call it wicked, we'll call him troublesome.
The troublesome child asks, what does this service mean to you?
To you and not to himself, because he takes himself out of the community and thereby misses the point. He sets this children teeth on edge, and the person who may respond says, it's because of what God did for me in taking me out of Egypt. Me, he's suggesting, but not him. Maybe, had that child been there, he would have been left behind. All right? So he would have done...
That's very harsh.
That is very harsh.
Very harsh.
But just think of it as Home Alone, the Egypt edition.
Okay.
Right? All right. What does the simple child say?
The simple child asks, what is this?
To the child, we answer plainly, with a strong hand, God took us out of Egypt, where we were slaves. What does the child who doesn't know how to ask a question say?
Help this child ask.
All right, we have to start. It's the same thing for those of you who don't know how to unmute your Zoom. All right, some of us just don't know how. And so for you, we do what we can to guide us. And at this point, it's a good moment to give thanks to Bob, our master of ceremonies, who is making sure all of this works. It is because of what God did for us in the land of Egypt that we celebrate. All right, and now I invite you to turn to page 21. Our story starts in ancient times with Abraham, the first person to have the idea that maybe all those little statues his contemporaries worshiped as gods were, after all, just statues. The idea of one God, an overarching intelligence, invisible and all-powerful, inspired him to leave his family and to begin a new people in Canaan, the land that would one day bear his grandson Jacob's adopted name, Israel. Would you read the second paragraph?
God had made a promise to Abraham that his family would become a great nation. But this promise came with a frightening vision of the troubles along the way. Your descendants will dwell for a time in a land that is not their own, and they will be enslaved and afflicted for 400 years. However, I will punish the nation that enslaved them, and afterwards they shall leave with great wealth.
And with yet another curious gesture, we lift up our second glass and we acknowledge that Jewish life has not always been an easy life. For not only one enemy has risen against us to destroy us, but in every generation there are those who would rise up against us. But God saves us from those who seek us harm. And we put the glass down. Why? Why do we choose not to drink at that moment? Any theories?
I'm going to let everyone see what they think, if anybody says anything. Well, they say wine is a cup of joy.
Right.
Is a cup of, and we're denying ourselves that.
We are denying
In honor
ourselves
for the-
because
those who didn't
of
get
those who suffered.
Yeah.
That's a lovely, lovely interpretation. I also think it may be connected to the later tradition of removing wine from our glass. We do that because we remember the suffering of the Egyptians in order for us to go free. As we talk about how other enemies have sought to destroy us, perhaps we do not seek to gloat over their suffering and their defeats by drinking a glass of wine to their suffering. So I think both of those ideas may be connected to the idea of even cultivating empathy for even the people who would do us harm. In the years our ancestors lived in Egypt, our numbers grew, and soon the family of Jacob became the people of Israel. And Pharaoh and the leaders of Egypt grew alarmed by this great nation growing within their borders, and so they enslaved us, and we were forced to perform hard labor, perhaps even building pyramids. We didn't build pyramids. No, that's not right.
True.
No. We did other projects. All right. The Egyptians feared that even as slaves, the Israelites might grow strong and rebel. This is always the fear of the slave owner, that those that they oppress may in turn reverse power and oppress them. So Pharaoh decreed that the Israelite baby boys should be drowned to prevent the Israelites from overthrowing those who had enslaved them. But God heard the cries of the Israelites, and God brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand and with an outstretched arm and with great awe and with miraculous signs and wonders. God brought us out not by an angel and not by a messenger, that's a little diss on Moses perhaps, but through God's own intervention. And so it is, we reach the essential message of our evening. Avadim chayinu, we were slaves to Pharaoh, ata b'nei horin. Today we are free. Lindsay, would you lead us in our keystone song? Page 24.
עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורים בני
Had God not brought our ancestors out of Egypt, then even today, we and our children and our grandchildren would still be slaves in different contexts, in different ways. So even if we're all wise, even if we're very knowledgeable scholars and Torah experts, we should still tell this story over and over again of the Exodus from Egypt. And anyone who can elaborate on it is considered praiseworthy. Now we come to the tragedy of the 10 plagues, something that touches particularly close to us today. Our ancestors saw these plagues as a moral force. They understood this pestilence to be a sign of God's judgment against the criminal acts of others. And we understand it that way to this day. However, we now understand that the pestilence we suffer today is not a decider between good and evil, between the right and the wrong, between those who deserve suffering and those who deserve vindication. We know that just as the sun shines on the righteous and the wicked, that just as the rain falls upon the righteous and the wicked, misfortune and suffering also falls upon both the righteous and the wicked. So while we rejoice in our deliverance from Egypt, we want to acknowledge that there are people who suffer, that some of them are innocent, even in a good cause, and therefore we want to diminish our joy by removing drops of wine from our cups. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can pour it out from one cup to another container, or you can remove it with your fingers. That's the way I like to do it. And so we're going to join together. We're going to recite the Hebrew name and then the English word for each of the plagues. And we're going to remove, that's a good choice. By the way.
I
Yes.
didn't want you to put it on the table.
No, I'm going to put it on my paper
okay.
over here. All right. So dip a finger into your wine glass and remove a drop for each plague. These are the 10 plagues which God brought down on the Egyptians. Dam, blood. Zifadea, frogs. Pnim, lice. Arov, beasts. Dever, cattle afflictions. Shechin, boils. Barad, hail. Arba, locusts. Hoshech, darkness. Barkat habechorot, the death of the firstborn. The Egyptians sadly needed 10 plagues because after each one, they were able to come up with reasons, excuses, and explanations rather than confront their behavior and change it. Could we be making the same mistakes in our day? Maybe you should think about, in light of this plague, what we could, what we should be doing better in the future. What have we learned? What can we do in our society to take care of those who are most vulnerable to these kinds of afflictions? Let us search our hearts and let us imagine what it must be like to be the victim of such a thing. However, in reflecting on that and recognizing that, we cannot deny the joy that we are free. But it's more than that. God has given us many, many more gifts, many, many more things that we can celebrate, that we can be grateful for. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to sing the traditional Ilu Hotzi Hotzianu, the song of Dainu, which is a lot of fun. We're not going to be flogging each other with green onions. It would look rather ridiculous for Robin and I just to be beating each other while we're singing. Yeah. Well, actually, that's not an impediment in itself, but it just lacks some of the impact. So anyway, we're not going to be flogging this year, but we are going to sing. But in the meantime, maybe you can type in something you're grateful for, that it's enough that you have this or that thing, this or that blessing in your life today. So let's start with our traditional song and let's think about all the things that it's enough that we have in our lives today. Lindsay?
Rabbi, I would like to say that there are those of us in the chat who would love to see you and Robin flog each other with green onions. That would be wonderful.
They're encouraging you to flog each other with green.
Darn, we didn't bring
No,
them.
okay, here, we
Darn.
do have parsley.
I told
Wait,
you.
wait, here you go. Here's a parsley.
Okay.
All right, I've got a parsley. You probably need a reinforcing parsley, all right, for
Oh,
the
thank you.
secondary events.
Thank you so
All right, thank you, Lindsay. All right, are we ready? Let's go for it.
Are we doing any more verses, or are we just doing these two?
Oh, no, stop right there. No, that's good. All right, I got carried away, you know. So, Dainu, it would have been enough for us if we had these blessings in our lives. What do we got?
We've got for our loving relationship,
Loving relationships.
for family's health,
Dainu,
for health, my son and my financial stability,
Dainu,
to live in a safe and loving home.
Dainu.
And
That's wonderful. And I would say that we live in a world of so much surplus, Dainu, that we have the surplus resources to care for one another, Dainu, and that we have a community of Jews who love one another and support one another and will sustain each other till the time when the Messiah comes. Dainu. All right. Now, we are going to flip over. All right. Oh, I even have a list of gratefuls on here. I am so impressed. All right. All right. We are grateful that we are together on this night as a family. We are grateful that we are together to share this moment. We are grateful that we are together alive and healthy. We are grateful that we are able to eat together. We are grateful that we have a light shining upon us. We are grateful for everything and everyone we have. We are grateful for all that has touched our lives. And we are grateful that our ancestors never gave up hope, and that then we drink the second glass of wine together, Dainu. All right, now we come. If you turn to page 33, I guess I was having a little trouble here aligning things in my Make It Your Own Seder, so I apologize for the Haggadah's disorientation right here around page 30. All right, now as we transition from the formal telling of the Passover story to the celebratory meal, we again wash our hands to prepare ourselves.
You still haven't done the second cup? Is that right?
No, we haven't yet done the second cup. It's still coming.
Okay.
All right, all right. So, all right, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we go to our pots again. We once again do the washing. Ready? Sorry, the grip. And then we say, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al nitilat yadayim. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctifies us through commandments and commands us to raise our hands. So with that, we now turn to drying off our hands. All right. And hold on. Actually, before we get to our food symbols, we should say our second blessing. I must have lost it in the process of creating this because our second
It's
cup of
in
wine.
the wrong place is what it is this
it's-
year. It's on 29.
Oh, on 29. Okay, for those who need to see, I got in trouble in the right around 30. That's what happened to me. Here we go. Okay, so page 29, it is there. And we are going to drink our second cup of wine. All right. B'chol dor v'dor, yachav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mitzrayim. In every generation, we are all obligated to see ourselves as though we personally left Egypt. The Seder reminds us that it is not only our ancestors whom God redeemed us too along with them, their children. That's why the Torah says God brought us out from there in order to lead us and give us the land promised to our ancestors. And so we praise God, ruler of everything, who redeemed us and our ancestors from Egypt, enabling us to reach this night to eat matzah and bitter herbs. May we continue to reach future holidays in peace, prosperity, health, and happiness. What's up?
Is Lindsay doing it?
Oh yeah, Lindsay, you should do this. Ignore me.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pari hagafen.
Amen. L'chaim. All right, and now we come to our symbols. All right, so we begin.
We do that.
Let's see. With, what's that?
35, is that where we are?
Yes, we're page 35. We're going to begin with our matzah, the blessing over the meal for matzah. The familiar hamotzi blessing marks the beginning of the meal. Because we use matzah instead of bread, we add a second blessing, celebrating this mitzvah. Of course, we're not going to be eating a full meal, so we'll continue on to the symbols of the Seder plate. But we begin with the one that everybody knows. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi.
Hamotzi lehem min haaretz. Amen.
Because we have to say the second one specifically because it's matzah, which is commanded to us. And so Lindsay, lead us in the second blessing.
Wait, I'm a little bit lost in the order because I don't have page numbers on my digital copy.
Okay, we'll do it.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. We praise God, ruler of all, who made us holy through obligations, commanding us to eat matzah. And now we take the middle matzah that we didn't put away. For you, my dear, for me. Oh, wait, we gotta give some to Bob. Hold on. Okay, here it comes, Bob. Here it comes. Bob's hands dramatically extend into the camera. Bob takes it away, and there we see it. All right. So now we've done that, but there's more. But wait, there's more. So of course, the second symbol that we are going to acknowledge is the maror, which you'll see the blessing for that on page 38. Now.
On third. Really?
Yeah, isn't it there? Yes?
Yeah.
All right. This glorious chunk is actually the maror. This is horseradish. Now, of course, there is a debate in Jewish tradition about whether it should be this or romaine lettuce. And you know, whenever in doubt, what the rabbis say, do them both. So here they are, but we're going to focus on horseradish. And because it is this, and because I forgot a knife to do this, I will reach into my pocket and pull out my actually very recently cleaned multi-tool. And I will use that to shave off some maror. There we go. All right, my dear, here you go. A couple of pieces of horseradish for you. I'm sure many of you are using Olds or Beaver's horseradish at home, which is perfectly fine. I always have loved the beet root horseradish, but it's hard to find anymore. I don't know what's going on. I ascribe it to anti-Semitism. All right, there we go.
Among beets?
Among, you know, they know that Jews want red beet colored horseradish, and so they're out to get us.
Oh, boy.
All right, so we now take our maror, place it on our matzah, and we recite the blessing for bitter herbs. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav al achilat maror. All right, praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us by mitzvot and instructed us to eat bitter herbs. Now, the third move is to take a little of haroset and take some more bitter herbs. Oh, this is a nice chunk for you, my dear.
Oh, good.
Oh, that's beautiful. Here you go. All right. All right. I'll take something a little more modest. All right. There we go. And put it together with the haroset. And we split it in half. And without a blessing, we turned it into a nice little sandwich. All right.
What kind of a sandwich?
It's a Hillel of a sandwich because it was made by our ancestor Hillel, who commanded us to eat them together. And so we eat. Oh,
You
okay.
should say something about that.
Say about,
That
oh,
Casey made.
no,
that.
this is true.
It's
So
awesome.
our haroset is made by Casey, who makes so many of our things. She helped and pitched in getting our takeout Seder plates. And I specifically asked her the thing that I found most complicated to do, which was make the haroset. And so she did that for us. It's wonderful. And I strongly recommend you bother her in future years and ask her to give that. All right, so we've done our korech, or our Hillel sandwich. And now it's time for us to draw attention to our objects on the Seder plate. Where did that go? All right, so obviously I ran into trouble here, but that's okay. I am a trained professional, so I know how to get through this. So here we have our Seder plate. Here, fill yourself up with some more wine. The place with all of our symbols on it. So what do we got going here? We're only commanded in the Mishnah to identify 3 of the 6 things that are on here, leaving us to puzzle about the other 3. Again, another unresolved mystery that is left to us to talk about. But what is specifically here? I'm going to hold up, first of all, the Zeroah. It is, what is it, my love?
It is the shank bone.
It is a shank bone of a lamb.
It does say it on page 28.
Oh, it's page 28? See, I totally messed this up.
It's okay.
Oh my gosh.
You did this very quickly.
I
It's
did
fine.
this under pressure.
Yes,
Okay.
you did.
All right. The shank bone represents the Pesach, the special lamb sacrifice made in the days of the temple. And that's misleading. This represents the lamb that you guys are supposed to slaughter at home. I know I promised I would do a DIY Judaism on how to do this in the future. We'll get around to it eventually. But in any case, every home in biblical times was supposed to slaughter its own Pesach lamb and invite over anybody who didn't have their own family, and together they would consume this overnight. It reminds us of that tradition of the symbol of Passover. But along with that, we need to have bitter herbs, because we are told that we are commanded to eat bitter herbs with the lamb. Lamb is kind of dull by itself. And that this symbolized our experience in the land of Egypt. And so we have maror, which represents the bitterness of our bondage. And of course, we have matzah, which Gamliel told us to make reference to because it represents that haste with which we had to leave the land of Egypt. And we honor the fact that we got out of there in a hurry because God never told anyone to be stupid. And when they tell you to go, you go. All right, but that leaves us with a whole lot of other symbols. So I'm going to call attention to them. Of course, we have our karpas. We've already talked about that. I alluded to the idea of the romaine lettuce being the bitter herb that the Talmudic rabbis originally meant. They used both the word maror and charoset to refer. They could have meant it as a synonym, but you know, when we're in doubt in Judaism, you do both things. One of the most intriguing of the objects is this beautifully beaten up roasted egg. Why a roasted egg? Well, eggs, of course, are a symbol of spring. The consumption of an egg represents the hope for fertility in the future. It represents the circle of the seasons. But in truth, the definitive answer is that if this was the lamb that we ate at home, this represents the lamb that was sacrificed in the temple. There was a separate sacrifice, a national sacrifice made during the holiday in biblical times called the Hagigah, and that is represented by that. This is, I think, perhaps the most lovely and intriguing of them all, charoset. I am sure that you have all learned the tradition that the charoset represents or symbolizes the mortar that went between the bricks that we had to construct when we were slaves in Egypt. And indeed, this image is something that we can embrace because, you know, Passover binds us together.
Yeah.
And even though, we are far apart, we are still bound by this tradition and this story. However, my definitive answer, which is my definitive answer because it's not necessarily an argument made very often in tradition, I believe that this compote is made out of different kinds of fruits and nuts and spices because those are mentioned in the Song of Songs. And the Song of Songs is the poem that we believe represents God's love for the Jewish people. And so we represent the sweetness of that love in the form of this delicious compote. So I happen to love that. Now, in the last few decades, it has been customary to invite a visitor to the Seder plate, right? There's the famous feminist tradition of the orange, representing a sign that even though women do not occupy a central place in the narrative of the Seder, women are absolutely indispensable. And so the orange stands out to remind us of this glaring absence. Other people have included other things. This year, my guest to the Seder plate is a bar of soap, all right? And the reason I think we should have this here is because the truth of the narrative of the Passover Seder is that we were delivered. We were rescued, not by any merit or effort or empowerment of our own, Moses notwithstanding. God delivered us, and we were the passive recipients of that deliverance. Today, however, we have to take our deliverance in our own hands. So I believe that we should use this soap this year as a symbol to remind us that we have the power to overcome this plague and that it is in our hands to make this and mitigate this and reduce the suffering going on around us. So I include a bar of soap this year as our visitor to the Seder plate. Now, I believe we've covered all of those symbols. And since we're not eating a meal, I'm going to invite us to scoot up to page 40, 41. Now we come to finding the Afikomen. All right, this is an interesting one. I've been racking my brains about how we can hunt for the Afikomen virtually. And I came up with a cunning plan. So, do we have any people under the age of 13 out there listening in? If they are, identify themselves.
I'm thinking not.
But it may take a second. Because
Okay.
It's got to get to them and they're.
Right, I understand.
Shula Armator is?
Yes.
Hey, Shula.
Hi, Shula. That's about it, huh?
We got, Mr. Miller said he acts like a 13-year-old.
Oh, I understand. All right. So we're going to do the senior competition. All right. And
She can be in on that. 'cause
you
she's-
can be on it. Oh,
she's really
Shula,
smart.
no, absolutely.
Yeah, she's super
We,
smart.
we assume you can participate in this. You're a very mature 13-year-old, so this is going to work out. Okay, so the afikomen, right? Miraculously, I have here the afikomen and its location in this envelope. All right, now what we're going to do is Bob is going to post 2 photographs, one of Robin and my kitchen at home, and another one of the study. And somewhere in one of those 2 pictures, there is hidden the afikomen. The information for what is the answer is right in here. So what I want you to do is analyze those pictures, identify places where you think the afikomen could be, and then post them. And the first person to identify the right location, I will pull out the card and show you are right. And when I see you months from now, I'll give you a big hug and maybe even a gift. So post those 2 pictures, Bob. Let people take a look at them and see if they can figure out where the afikomen is in the Dennis household.
So how should they tell you when they see the picture?
Well, what they should do is they should hold up their hand and propose a location to me, and I will tell them whether it is correct or not. And the first person to get it right, all right?
So from your kitchen, we have guests in the dog treats, Instapot.
All right, dog treats, no.
Instapot.
No,
Everybody's participating, by the way.
that's fine.
A drawer, a cabinet.
Nope. Which cabinet?
It's not in a cabinet.
There's a whole bunch of, I'm going to torment them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm tormenting. All right.
All right,
Sorry.
let's switch back over to the study.
All right, for the study.
We have on top of the bread maker, open drawer. There's one drawer slightly more open than the other.
Ah, good. Mm-hmm.
They thought you should have put it in the bread maker. That would have been diabolical.
That would have been diabolical if it was in the bread maker.
Oh, I
The
thought that's
light,
what it was.
What's that?
the light.
Nope. Keep analyzing.
So because there's so many shelves in there, just say what number.
Yeah,
from-
just say a number shelf, one from the top to the bottom, or you can identify a drawer, right or left, or an object,
The box on the table.
not the box on the table.
Top of the fridge.
Good try. Nope.
Behind the plant.
Behind the plant. What plant are we talking about? That's not behind the
Flowers.
plant. No, it's not behind the plant.
Oh, wait a minute. I think it stopped my sharing for a minute. Oh, it's only sharing that one. Okay. So we're back to the kitchen. Hold on, let me switch over to the study. I've got-
Okay. Any study theories?
Switch to the study. I didn't realize it would let me shoot it this way.
Are we giving clues?
Okay, so now they should see the study. For the rest of the kitchen, we have open drawer under ginger ale, open drawer, kitchen light. Okay, now they can see the kitchen drawer that appears to be open a bit.
Mm,
They should see your study now, so.
okay. No, nobody's gotten it in the kitchen.
In the printer,
Ah, interesting. That would be stupid.
Oh, I hope we didn't do that.
back to the pressure cooker from your kitchen again.
Okay. They're so close in the kitchen.
I thought somebody had said it, so,
No.
no? Okay, then I don't know where it is.
Behind Wonder Woman.
Ah! Simon Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simon Tov. That is, in fact, correct. There it is.
Judith Bernstein is our lucky winner.
Judith Bernstein behind Wonder Woman. All right. Very good. All right. The afikomen has been retrieved and it miraculously transports itself right here. And now because we have the afikomen, we can share a bite of it and we can continue on and conclude our Seder. Bob, here you go.
But I'm
Bob's
very
hand
comfortable.
reaching out. There we are. Okay. All right. So now we refill everybody's glasses. We're going to offer a very, very short grace after the meal.
Which we won't do.
All right, which is in the second paragraph in English. All right. We praise God, ruler of everything, whose goodness sustains the world. You are the origin of love and compassion, the source of bread for all. Thanks to you, we need never lack for food. You provide food enough for everyone. We praise God, the source of food for everyone. As it says in the Torah, when you have eaten and you are satisfied, then give praise to your God who has given you this good earth. So we praise God for the earth and its sustenance. Renew our spiritual center in our time. We praise God who centers us. May the source of peace grant peace to us, to the Jewish people and the entire world. And let us say, Amen. Ose shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol
Israel, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. עושה שלום ממרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. ואמרו אמן.
So I hope you all have a third glass of wine at home. And I know if you're reduced to juice or Coca-Cola, it doesn't matter. You're here with us. And together we say the third blessing. Please, Lindsay.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן.
Now, again, I'm slightly out of order here. I wanted to save the fourth glass to the very end. The cup of Elijah should come in between. So we're going to page 45. So in addition, and more traditional really than the cup of Miriam is the cup of Elijah. Why do we have a cup for Elijah on our plate? I'll tell you. So in the Talmud, we are told that we drink 4 cups of wine in honor of the four promises that God gave us that he would bring us out of Egypt. And then some cunning rabbi said, wait a minute, I see a 5th blessing. Is this not a 5th blessing? And he cites the blessing. And he says, therefore, shouldn't we be drinking 5 cups of wine? However, the tradition was already established that we should drink 4 cups of wine. So the 5th cup of wine is what we would call in Jewish tradition a safek, a doubtful question. We don't know whether we're supposed to drink a 5th cup or not. So what we've done instead is set out the 5th cup, not drink it, and ask Elijah, the prophet, who will come heralding the Messiah, to tell us whether we should be drinking it or not. So this is the cup of Elijah.
It's like the mezuzah.
It's like the mezuzah, right? You're
Whatever.
compromising. You're not sure what you're supposed to do with
For
it,
Elijah.
right? We don't know how to compromise on the 5th cup, right? We could drink half of it, but that doesn't seem to make sense. So the 5th cup is set aside for what is called a teku. A teku is an unresolved question in Jewish tradition that we believe that when prophecy is finally restored, a prophet will be able to tell us the correct answer. But of course, all this is secondary to what Elijah symbolizes. Elijah symbolizes caring for the needy. being zealous for God, supporting the Jewish people, and being ready to go hither and yon in order to fulfill God's will. And so it is, according to our tradition, that Elijah wanders the earth even today, doing good deeds, assisting the needy, and being there for the Jewish people when we need him. And so we look for him to make his final appearance tonight, to open the door in the hopes that he will show up and announce that this year is the year of the coming of the Messiah. Now, I'm fairly sure that God has decided to defer his coming this year because we're supposed to be sheltering in place. However, we are going to honor the tradition. And what we're going to do is open the door to the wide open world, because the time is coming in the near future when we will all be able to go out of our doors and rejoice in God's world once again. So if Bob will take the camera as I slowly, very slowly walk towards the door. And Lindsay, you're going to be prepared to sing Eliyahu HaNavi. There it is. Not Elijah, but the world waiting for us after we stop sheltering in place. It's there for us. It awaits our return, and we will be going out there a little taste of the Messianic era when we are fully restored to our freedom to move about the world. So with that, I invite us to sing to Elijah.
Eliyahu HaNavi, Eliyahu HaTishvi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu HaGiladi, Bimhera b'yamenu, Yavo Einu, Im Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu HaNavi, Eliyahu HaTishvi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu HaGiladi.
And now I invite you to turn back to page 44. We're going to be singing at the conclusion of our service, but we're going to have our fourth cup of wine now. And as we come to the end of the Seder, we drink one more glass of wine. With this final cup, we give thanks for the experience of celebrating Passover together but apart, for the traditions that help inform our daily lives, guide our actions and our aspirations. We give thanks. The blessing for wine.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hadafen.
Baruch atah L'chaim. Now, we're going to finish out with two songs, and then we will read our conclusion. Our first song on page 49 is Adir Hu, which is our serious, solemn song. And then we're going to follow that with Had Gadya. Lindsay, you're doing that in the English version?
Yes.
All right, we're doing the English version of it. So, and that's our, as Jack Black likes to say, the world's first heavy metal song, right? Because it's really dark. All right, but it was a very cheerful tune. So we begin with Adir Hu, Mighty is He, page 49.
All right, and this one has several different versions of it, so hopefully you've heard this one.
Adir Hu, Himei Malkoi Karo, Bimheira, B'Yamenu Mekaro, El B'nei,
Wasn't sure what version of Had Gadya that Lindsay knows, so we're just going to let her sing us and take us out, and then we'll do our final reading and declare next year in Jerusalem.
All right.
Right, we're wrapping up. So I invite you to turn to page 46. Yitzhak marks the conclusion of the Seder. Our bellies are full. We've had several glasses of wine. We've told stories and sung songs, and now it's time for the evening to come to a close. At the end of the Seder, we honor the tradition by declaring next year in Jerusalem. For some people, the recitation of this phrase emphasizes the anticipation of rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem and the return of the Messiah. For others, it's an affirmation of hope and connectedness with Klal Yisrael, the whole of the Jewish community. Still, others yearn for peace in Israel and for all those who live in the diaspora beyond Israel's borders. Though it comes at the end of the Seder, this moment also marks a beginning. We are beginning the next season with a renewed awareness of the freedoms we enjoy and the challenges we must face and still confront. We are looking forward to a time, and there's a special poignancy, when we can gather together again. May it come swiftly. Having retold stories of the Jewish people, recalled historic moments of liberation, reflected on the struggles our people still face for freedom and equality, we are ready to embark on a year that we hope will bring positive change in the world and freedom to people everywhere. As David Hartman wrote, Passover is the night for reckless dreams, for visions about what a human can be, what society can be, what people can be, and what history can become. What can we do to fulfill our reckless dreams? What will be our legacy for future generations? Our Seder is over, according to Jewish tradition and law. As we had the pleasure to gather electronically for this Seder this year, we hope once again to have the opportunity to do it face to face in years to come. We pray that God brings health and especially healing to Israel and to all the peoples of the world, especially those impacted by natural tragedy, by war, and by pestilence. And we say, Lishana Habaim B'Yushalayim. May next year in Jerusalem, next year, may we all be free. Hag Sameach, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. We are so glad to be able to celebrate with you.
Quick thanks to Lindsay.
And thank you, Lindsay.
Yay,
And
Lindsay.
thank you, Bob, the master behind the scenes, who's made all of this so easy that it's mind-boggling. Oh my gosh. All right.
Good night.
So, good night, everyone.